Welcome everyone. This public meeting for planning applications for the municipality of Central Elgin. It is Tuesday, May the 23rd at 5 p.m. We are in the council chambers and via Zoom. Thank you everyone for attending. If I could start with a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof, please. Seeing none. Minor variance 46292 North Street, Sparta. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to the proposed minor variance respecting 46292 North Street. Does any member of the committee have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none. Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting, please?
Mr. Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 60 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on May 8th, 2023. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff, and notice was also posted to the municipal website and displayed in the weekly CE Buzz advertisements.
Thank you. Have you received any written submissions on the proposal?
Mr. Chair, I have not.
Thank you. First of all, do we have anyone online for this proposal?
Mr. Chair, we do not currently have any online participants.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any questions? And I don't see anyone in the gallery, so I don't think there's any questions from any of the members of public. Everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. Is the committee prepared to make a decision or reserve its decision? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Those wanting to be notified of the committee's decision on any application should email Delaney Leach, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and provide their name and address. Those who don't have access to a computer can call 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. Public meeting is adjourned at 5:04 p.m.
Congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, they're muted.
This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed minor variance respecting 236 Colonel Bostwick Road, municipality of Central Elgin. Does any member of the committee have a disclosure of interest concerning the proposal? Seeing none, if the applicant or agent is in attendance, please come forward to the podium and explain the application, or if the applicant or agent is listening on the computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you have called into the meeting on your telephone, please dial *9. We will acknowledge your raised hand and you can unmute to explain your application. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Is everyone able to hear me?
We are, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's Helen Button of Gunn & Associates. I am the solicitor for the applicant. This is an application to recognize a lawful non-conforming residential use in a B1 zone in Port Stanley. It's being put forward as a condition of severance that was applied for several months ago.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting, please?
Mr. Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 60 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on May 8th, 2023. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff, and notice was also posted to the municipal website and displayed in the weekly CE Buzz advertisements.
Thank you. Have you received any written submissions on the proposal, please?
Mr. Chair, I have not.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in the gallery or anyone online wishing to speak to this, please?
Mr. Chair, see none.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any questions? No further questions from any members of public. Everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. Is the committee prepared to make a decision? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Those wanting to be notified of the committee's decision on any application should email Delaney Leach indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Delaney Leach at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide same information. This public meeting is adjourned at 5:12 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Button. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment respecting 5277 Quaker Road in the municipality of Central Elgin. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none. What method of notice and when was the notice given for the public for this meeting, please?
Mr. Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on April 29th, 2023. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff, and notice was also posted to the municipal website and displayed in the weekly CE Buzz advertisements.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Mr. McClure is here, our planner, with a presentation on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. As can be seen on the screen, this is a public meeting for an official plan to present a draft official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 5277 Quaker Road. So as can be seen on the screen, the subject lands are west of Quaker Road, south of Roberts Line. For people in the area, it's the former winter wheat property. Ultimately, what these individuals are proposing to do is bring forward a wedding event venue on the property, utilizing the existing buildings and structures. There's some long-term plans for some of the facility, but on the screen is the draft site plan that was submitted as part of the applications. And as what's required to go forward with this is an official plan amendment to recognize the proposed rural wedding event venue, and also to address some policies in the official plan that speak to the proposed servicing for that wedding event venue. And what that's going to do is provide an agricultural exception to the policies that specifically apply to these lands. What's on the screen now is part of the amendment. So item 1 of the amendment introduces Schedule I to the amendment, which shows an area shown in heavy solid lines on Schedule A and provides that this is the area of the exception to the agricultural designation. So again, this is a little bit hard to see on screen, but this is Schedule A to the official plan that outlines the land use plan for the municipality of Central Elgin. And then the inset there, it identifies the property in question and notes that it's going from agricultural to agricultural exception. Item 2 of the amendment then introduces a new subsection to the agricultural policy section of the official plan. Again, identifies that new subsection as 4.1.3.6, identifies that these specific lands may allow for an additional use, being a rural wedding and event venue space. And then that rural wedding and event venue space may utilize an autonomous water supply and washroom trailer that is owned and operated by the property owner. Again, this is the specific servicing that they've requested to advance the application. Again, with that, there comes a draft zoning bylaw amendment for that. So they're looking to rezone the property to a site-specific open space 1 zone, again, to permit the rural wedding event venue as an additional permitted use, address locations of the existing buildings and structures that are on the property, address capacity and parking for the additional use, and then provide exception to the servicing requirements of the zoning bylaw. So again, part 1 of the amendment introduces Schedule A to the bylaw, being map part 69C. And then part 2 of the amendment designates the lands outlined on that new schedule and in heavy solid lines as OS 1-233. So as can be seen on the screen, this is the map part that designates those lands. And then part 3 of the amendment introduces a new subsection to the OS1 zone, being 8.2.2.233, defines that area on the map part as OS1-233, provides that the additional permitted uses are rural wedding and event venue, then provides location of permitted building and structures, being those locations of existing building and structures, the passing of the bylaw, so those buildings that exist to date. And then noting that any new buildings and structures or additions to existing buildings and structures shall comply with the general provisions of the OS1 zone. Again, as per their justification, the maximum occupancy for the permitted use is 250 occupants. And that correlates with their proposed parking provisions as part of the bylaw, 75 spaces. There is a specific exception, again, because the general provisions of the bylaw require certain specific servicing requirements. What they're proposing does not conform to the zoning and the I guess the servicing requirements of the official plan. So that's what we've put forward to address those specific policies. And then part 4 of the amendment introduces Schedule B, being zoning map 69, which essentially consolidates all of the amendments that have occurred on that map part to date, including this amendment, which can be seen on the screen. And I guess just from a procedural perspective, given that this is an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, it's important to note that the official plan amendment itself, should it be adopted by council, will still have to go to the County of Elgin for approval, and that would correlate with any of the zoning that is potentially approved through this process as well. So specifically, the provision that would go, I guess, permit the use on the proposed servicing arrangement that doesn't currently comply with the official plan, that would need to be approved by the county as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Ms. Leach, have we received any written submissions on the proposal, please?
Mr. Mayor, I have not.
Thank you. I don't think there's anyone in the gallery, but I believe we have someone online. Mr. Hammond, are you available? Hannum, sorry, Mr. Hannum.
Good evening, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
I can, sir. Little soft, but
I'll turn my volume up.
perfect. Thank you, sir.
I have prepared a presentation as well. If I could have the share my screen option as well, that'd be great.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Wonderful. Okay, I think I'm all organized now. Can you see the cover page of the presentation?
We can, sir.
Wonderful. Look, good evening, Your Worship, and members of council and members of the public. My name is Dave Hannum. I'm a partner and registered professional planner with Zelinka Priamo, London-based planning consultancy. We're the planning consultants for Lauren and Jonathan DaCosta, who are the owners of the applicant lands. And we've submitted and pulled together the development application seeking land use permissions for a rural wedding event venue on this property. We've had an opportunity to review staff's April 24th report and note that while they're generally supportive of the use, the recommendation is not to support the applications. However, we're hopeful of a positive endorsement from council at the appropriate time. I have prepared a presentation to highlight some of the key aspects of the proposed development. I'm aware that I have a 10-minute limit. I'll do my very best to go through that, but I do have a little bit to go through in terms of just explaining the nature of the use itself, and apology if there are some repetition from previous commentaries you've received on this project. So I won't dwell too much on the subject lands themselves. I'm sure you're all familiar with them. They're approximately 5 acres in size. There's a single family home on it with a number of detached accessory buildings scattered throughout the property. There's treed areas. There's no active agricultural or farm operation on the property. There's no municipal or communal services available on this property. I'm sure you're familiar that on this property there was an operation formerly known as winter wheat, which operated as a sort of a folk art and community store for more than 20 years, and it ceased in the summer of 2020. The surrounding land uses comprise a dog kennel to the north, and then typically the remainder are farmed lands with farm dwellings and accessory farm dwellings and structures from there. This is a concept plan. I just want to quickly highlight some of the key components. I am going to scribble on this as I go. Hopefully it comes, please don't judge me in terms of my scribbling, but as I indicated, the DeCostas are the sole owners of these subject lands. Lauren DeCosta has actually been a professional events planner in Elgin County for over a decade. She operates the business known as 12th Nights Events. They're looking to effectively leverage the property and its amenities afforded to it by its unique rural setting and natural character, to effectively differentiate itself from a typical wedding event venue that you would find in an urban setting. In terms of the subject lands, I said they indicated they contain several detached dwellings, which are going to be remained unchanged. There's no significant structural changes to any of the exteriors. Parts of the properties, and I'm just going to denote here, parts of the properties are going to be used for these naturalized areas, which are going to be used for receptions. There is also at the rear here, just in this location here, is effectively a permanent at-grade wooden foundation that measures about 50 feet by 100 feet, and that's the location of the previous winter wheat building that was demolished. This structure would accommodate a range of reception tent configurations, and that would be coordinated by the DeCostas with regards to a third-party tent company. At this stage, there's no short-term plans to construct permanent buildings on the site, but they are looking to possibly do that if this business gets off the ground. The venue itself utilizes a local third-party caterer, Northmore Catering, as well as other local professional services. Northmore is the only catering company that they use for these weddings. There's no food preparation on the property. There's no dishwashing facilities available. As such, the caterer provides enough glasses and crockery and cutlery for the entire function and surplus as well. There's on-site portable water service available for the caterers, but typically Northmore will bring their own portable water. There's also a hydro facility, a separate hydro facility for the caterer as well. The proponent will effectively organize all the necessary licenses for the wedding of the event. In terms of alcohol, if the venue users want to bring their own alcohol, they must obtain a special liquor license through the municipality and obtain insurance. Northmore caterers are the bartenders. Alternatively, Northmore has a traveling liquor license and can handle all that. Wedding events on the property take place typically once a weekend from June to October 31st. There's a max capacity of 250 guests. And as Kevin had indicated, there's 75 parking spaces, which are generally located in this area here and here and here for guests. I'll just switch to the next slide. So on your screen's an artist version of the concept plan. Some of the following slides, I'll just provide some photos and some further details with respect to these components. As indicated, there's a permanent at-grade wooden foundation provided for a range of tent sizes, and this is in the location of the previous winter wheat building. This, as I said, there are some longer-term plans depending on the feasibility of the business to perhaps put a permanent reception building and washrooms in this location. In terms of this area, it's used for guest parking, for parking of caterers, And also, as I indicated, there is a portable water supply in the tented area that's sourced from the existing well on the property. That's typically used for filling vases, those sorts of things as well. As mentioned, there are several parts of the property which are naturalized areas used for reception areas, typically with temporary seating that's removed after the event. In terms of parking and access, the existing access off Quaker Road will be maintained. The existing driveway will access existing grassed areas at the front of the site, as well as the gravelled area near the tent that I showed you. There's a total of 75 on-site spaces provided throughout the site, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we got to that point a bit later on. But the majority of guests actually arrive by shuttle bus. The venue block books accommodation for guests and then arranges to have either Bata bus lines or Elgin bus lines, and the yellow buses collect guests from the hotels and drop them at the property, and then offers continuous shuttle services throughout the event. I'll just quickly go through these. There's a couple of existing buildings, and these are typically used. This is the studio, which is used for photographs, as the backdrop for storage of guests, and also as a small office. There's also the greenhouse, which is used for photographic backdrops. In terms of the supporting materials, there was a range of technical studies prepared in support of the application. There was planning report and a number of addendums providing additional detailed analysis in response to staff circulation comments. There was detailed MDS calculations for all relevant neighbouring facilities, which confirmed that the proposal complies with the recommended separation distances. There was an issues scoping report prepared with respect to confirming that the proposed development doesn't impact natural heritage features. And in addition, the DeCostas reached out to the surrounding properties and local business owners and to discuss the development, and received a number of letters of support, which were provided to staff. At the stage, we're not aware of any objections raised by members of the public. I just wanted to touch on three key issues or matters that were raised. I have spoken briefly about the environmental side of it. The DeCostas retained MTE to prepare a issue scoping report, which came back, which provided documentation on ecological study and demonstrated the proposed use would not have a negative impact on natural heritage features or their functions. Secondly, the parking and traffic. In response to staff's initial concerns about the lands being located in a rural setting, the total number of proposed parking spaces was increased by over 50% to 75 on-site parking spaces, at a rate of approximately three spaces to every 3 seats. And we use the seats because there is no typical rate in the zoning for these types of uses. We used as an initial basis the assembly hall or function venue as a rate which is typically 1 for 7 spaces, but obviously it's significantly more parking based on a rural definition. It's interesting if a venue of this size, in terms of potential seating, was located within an urban area, rather than 75 spaces, the zoning would actually only require 14 on-site spaces based on GFA. The parking was chosen for a number of reasons, one being in proximity to the tented area for caterers and for guests that have accessibility issues, but also because the grassed areas are already cleared of any vegetation. That the DeCostas were very conscious of making sure that nothing unnecessarily, apart from any diseased or dangerous trees, were actually removed from the site. And as indicated again, the majority of guests would arrive and leave actually by a pre-arranged shuttle bus service, which would use the main driveway and turnaround area and the gravel area. one of the issues that was raised by county staff, although they didn't require the submission of a traffic report, they were concerned about vehicles associated with the proposed use, perhaps parking on the county road. However, it's our opinion that given the level of on-site parking plus the rideshare options, that there will be no need to park vehicles on the county road. And then finally, from a servicing perspective, the owners propose to service a proposed use with a potable water sourced from the existing well on the property, and that is actually brought to the required areas by underground pipes. The water system comprises an autonomous water supply, and it will be owned and operated and managed by the property owner. As I indicated, there's portable water available at the tent area. There is potable water at the caterers area, as well as hot and cold potable water at the washroom location, the trailer washroom. And just on that, on-site sewage treatment is proposed via a trailer, which the DeCostas will own, with its own washrooms and holding tanks for grey water and black water, which would be serviced regularly by a licensed sewage hauler. So this would be located permanently on the property. This is a very typical arrangement for servicing rural wedding venues. As I indicated, it is the owner's long-term plan to build a permanent building in this location, subject to the viability of the business at this stage. And that would include permanent washrooms as well. At that stage, if we get to that, the owners would be required to provide the servicing studies, and they acknowledge that, to confirm suitability of the site for associated water service, sewage disposal in the long term. But in the interim, it's our view that because of the self-contained nature of these washroom trailers, it could be concluded that there would be no negative impact on groundwater or source water. Furthermore, the DeCostas have spoken to the public health inspectors at Southwest Public Health and confirmed that the ultimate regulatory requirements with regards to public health matters associated with this use, they would be able to satisfy the appropriate public health requirements. So just in final conclusions, it's our opinion that the proposed use is appropriate and desirable for the subject lands and represents good land use planning. The DeCostas have looked to work with staff at every opportunity and provide responses to requested information and materials. And on behalf of the DeCostas, we'd like to thank staff because they have been very patient with us with respect to the processing of that. The proposed wedding venue looks to leverage these rural amenities, and that's to the benefit of the local economy in terms of job creation, tourist revenue. There won't be any impacts in terms of existing agricultural operations or natural heritage. Given the level of on-site parking and ride share, there's not any and the good access of the property to county roads, there's not anticipated to be any traffic impacts. And because of the self-contained nature of the sanitary servicing, it's not anticipated that there'd be any significant impacts, environmental impacts. So, as such, we would request that at the appropriate time that council votes to approve the applications as submitted. Look, thank you very much for your consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions now or at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hannum. I appreciate it. Does any member of the council have any questions? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Mr. Hannum. I do also agree that in many ways this is a desirable use of this land in this area. And I was pleased to see that you had brought forward a solution as far as the shortage of parking is concerned. But I am concerned about your statement that this use can meet public health requirements. And I'm concerned about that because I see that a year ago, the province told the applicants that this proposal didn't meet provincial policy standards, didn't meet D service guidelines, and the health unit confirmed that they also felt that it didn't meet the Health Protection and Promotion Act guidelines. So I'm wondering whether, in the same way that you've made adjustments to your parking, you've made any changes that have caused either the province or the health unit to give you a green light.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Mr. Hannam, please.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that because as part of the application review process, we spoke to public health as well. The way that the facility works, and particularly with respect to the requirements for catering, that's all handled through the third party Northwood caterers, who effectively need to obtain the necessary licenses from the municipality with regards to each event. And so I have no reason to believe that a professional catering company wouldn't be able to adhere to weddings in this location. So, I'm really relying on the information I've been provided through the applicant with respect to their relationship with this professional third-party catering that would operate on the site, that they would meet all of those requirements.
Thank you, sir. Any other? Oh, pardon me, Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. I guess just as supplemental to some of the discussions that's been had, and just to clarify, so the comments, and I can't speak to Mr. Hannam and his discussions with Southwest Public Health, but specifically when staff spoke to Southwest Public Health, there's specific provisions within the Health Protection and Promotion Act that deal with temporary events. So those types of things where there may be a fair or something along those lines, there's specific exceptions to the legislation that would allow similar instances or portable facilities to be utilized. However, it's the expectation of the legislation and Southwest Public Health that any business use or use itself has the appropriate services in place to accommodate for that use to ensure public health and safety can be adhered to or maintained. So that's where, again, I can't speak to the discussion or what was discussed with Mr. Hannam, but should an event pop up once on somebody like a friend's property, an exception may be granted. But when you're dealing with businesses and business types uses, which this is, it falls within another category. And that's where those types of services are required to be maintained and provided. And that further goes on to letters and correspondence to the county and staff by the Ministry of the Environment that has provided that the services and servicing arrangements that the applicant has providing or suggesting to provide does not meet with the Ministry of the Environment standards for a private system. So again, while we see fairs and other things where this may occur, be permitted on a one-off basis as a business or something that's going to be perpetually used, that's not something that the province or Southwest Public Health looks at as an acceptable servicing arrangement.
Questions or any other questions? Seeing none, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on this proposed amendment should email Delaney Leach indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on, or they can call 631-4860 extension 286 and provide the same information. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. This public meeting is adjourned at 5:48. Thank you. Welcome. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment respecting Talbot line employment lands. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none. Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting, please?
Mr. Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on April 28th, 2023. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff, posted to the municipal website, and displayed in the weekly CE Buzz advertisements.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. We have Dave Aston from MHB Planning to present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Mr. Aston, please.
Good evening, Mayor Sloan and members of council and members of the public. Here this evening to give a presentation on the public meeting for the municipal led zoning bylaw amendment for the Talbot line employment lands. And as you can see, the employment lands now relate to land south of the rail line. So that has been a change since we started this process. The purpose for this evening is really to share information relative to the process that we've been undertaking, the background that led into the draft zoning bylaw that has been provided, provide some summary of comments that we've heard, which have led us to make some changes from the original draft to the draft that's presented this evening. And then to hear from landowners or from the public on what's being proposed relative to the draft bylaw, so that we have that information before bringing back a final report for consideration to council. So in a nutshell, I'll just walk through the slides from there. So at the starting point of any zoning bylaw is the official plan. And the official plan on these lands identifies the lands for industrial purposes, the majority, which is the gray slide that you see there, gray on the slide, and then commercial industrial, which is the pink. So the official plan is establishing the vision for the area, the projected uses for the area that would be considered over the longer term. As you can see, there are other surrounding land uses within the area, commercial, industrial, just across the road, to the east, residential lands or lands identified as hamlet, and to the north, industrial lands. So the surrounding area is kind of characterized in the official plan by industrial or commercial industrial uses, with the exception of the hamlet lands that are to the east of the overall area. So the official plan giving direction with regard to the zoning, and the existing zoning is really a mix of different open space, commercial uses. The blue in the corner is an existing subdivision plan with existing zoning that provides for a mix of different types of commercial uses, hotels, types of uses. And then existing businesses related to the farm machinery and sales are identified as site-specific, and then other site-specific zones associated with some of the existing residential uses. So there's a mix in the area that allows, and the existing, what I'd call the interim agricultural use, given the official plan designation of the lands, the existing residential uses, some existing businesses, and some existing planned uses on the subject lands. So as we started into the process when considering location and scale and type of industrial use, we started to take a look at the ministry guidelines associated with land use compatibility. So this slide takes a look at the differences, the separation distances associated with different scales of industrial uses. And there's three scales: class 1, class 2, and class 3. Class 1 is generally representative of some businesses there. There are some class 2 businesses in the area as well. maybe more to the west of the land, some broader industrial uses. And then class 3 facilities are really large facilities. And in this case, on these lands, the scale of the operations that are being proposed through the zoning bylaw amendment wouldn't entail consideration of class 3 uses. So we focused on class 1 and 2 type uses. And what this plan illustrates is a 20-meter setback and a 70-meter setback. And what the ministry guidelines do is they give direction with regard to planning considerations for changes in land uses, as far as if you're looking to introduce either new industrial uses adjacent to sensitive uses or new sensitive uses adjacent to industrial uses, it recommends setbacks to be established where there has been no site-specific study done. So this slide identifies those setback areas, which we then used as a starting point to get a sense of where we would locate what we're calling more general industrial and lighter industrial relative to scale and compatibility. So since the initial draft of the bylaw, there's been 2 landowner meetings and comments been received through those meetings. There's been written comments received as well. We've had a chance to review all of those, have had discussion with Mr. Perrin and staff, who has been a great help along the way as well in providing background and history and knowledge associated with the area. And we've made some changes since the presentation at the last landowner meeting based on some feedback. There's a change to the zoning schedule where we increased the area of the light industrial adjacent to existing residential uses. We increased and defined a little bit more the landscape strip. There was some question, well, what's the landscape strip? What's the purpose of it? What can happen there? So we defined that a little more clear so there was a true landscape strip and not just a setback where a driveway or parking area could go, so that it was a true separation. There's comment with regard to the impact of permission of a railway marshalling yard. So we took that and looked at a 300-meter setback from residential use, and that's why it's only located into a certain area within this area, the subject lands. CN provided comments with regard to a rail setback. That's been included in the bylaw. And then there were some comments from existing businesses just ensuring that there was opportunity for their business to continue and to expand onto lands that they currently own and are looking for future expansion. So we've made sure that in the bylaw, there's provision available for that to occur as well. So the proposed zoning, what was presented previously is the top map. What's proposed in the current draft is the bottom map. So we've looked at increasing kind of the setback of the general industrial use, which I would describe as a more larger scale, potentially more impact to the residential from what was previous. And you can see on the mapping, there's the overlay zoning associated with the official plan as well. So that's been one of the changes to the bylaws to look at that increased distance. Next slide. There's other changes also associated with the proposed permitted uses and just making sure that we provided appropriate notes and definitions associated with those lands. You can see in association with the farm equipment, that's an existing use. We wanted to make sure that that operation had the ability to expand its existing use onto lands that are split designated actually and would be split zoned. Next. This is the regulations where we looked at increasing the minimum setback requirements from residential uses and provided some further definition on landscape strips and what is to happen within those landscape strip areas. So there was information received with regard to those matters at the meeting. So we've responded by making changes in that regard. Next slide. So where are we at in the process? This evening, the public meeting, we've been working through the schedule as it relates to the landowner meetings, providing the background information reports. This evening, we're here to receive any other public feedback. Consider that relative to the proposed zoning bylaw. And really, if there's comments or questions from the public this evening at council, I'm happy to come back up to respond. But I know there's been a lot of comments from the landowners with regard to questions associated with, I would call, outside of the realm of planning consideration of zoning, with regard to the use of their lands, the existing use of the lands, the future use of the lands relative to ownership and discussion around future ownership. So those from a planning perspective are kind of outside of the realm of this study. There's also been a lot of questions and comments about traffic and servicing and matters that we've identified would be subject to future studies through it could be an environmental assessment or a master environmental servicing plan, where those matters would be looked at comprehensively from a servicing perspective, traffic impact studies to look at access locations and any improvements that would be required in consultation with the province, of course. But that would be a further step where there'd be those future technical studies prepared. So those have been, some of the broader questions. But in this instance, when we're looking at the zoning bylaw, what we're looking to do is implement the official plan and establish that zoning that, pre-zones the lands that then would give information to the future technical studies and provide for future consideration of those lands and efforts to make them available for employment uses as soon as possible, subject to those technical studies. So that's for this evening. We're again looking to hearing if there's anything else we could be considering relative to the bylaw, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Aston. Does any member of council have any questions? Before opening the meeting to questions of the public, I ask that all participants be respectful to members of council and municipal staff. If you're attending in person, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record before asking your question. If you're listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting, use a telephone, please dial *9. Is there anyone attending via Zoom wishing to speak?
Hello?
Hello, if you could, first of all, one moment, please, if you could just hold for a sec. I skipped over this. Have you received any written submissions on the proposal, Ms. Leach? I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, the following correspondence has been received and circulated to staff and council. Correspondence from Billy Hacklander, Senior Manager of Capital Programs, Lake Huron and Elgin Area Water Supply Systems, highlighting that the Elgin Area Primary Water Supply System has 2 transmission pipelines within a dedicated easement that run through the subject lands, along with the 3rd water main that is owned by another municipality. These transmission pipelines are owned by the Primary Water Supply System and are not available or intended for direct connection for provision of water servicing. The Primary Water Supply System's drainage sewer also crosses the subject lands within that easement and is not available for any connection for the provision of external storm or draining servicing. The primary water supply requires unconstrained and unobstructed access to its easement and infrastructure, and no buildings or permanent structures would be permitted to be constructed within the easement. Any improvement to the lands within the limits of the easement would be subject to consultation, review, and approval by the Elgin Area Primary Water Supply System. There is also email correspondence from Danielle Bernardo, a residential landowner, on the subject lands, expressing concern about the uncertainty that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would create for already existing residential property owners, and asking that impacted residents be afforded the opportunity for financial compensation and relocation subsidized by the City of St. Thomas and Province of Ontario, with the municipality of Central Elgin benefiting from revenue generated by industrial development once the homes were removed.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Back to our questions from Zoom. I apologize if I cut you off, and if you'd like to state your name and your comments, please, or question.
Hi, my name is Crystal. I'm the secretary for the corporation that owns 9427 Yarmouth Center Road. So we are just south of where the cutoff is. It used to be Ken's Auto Body Shop, so it's C1-1 zoning. We actually called and spoke with Kevin, and I believe the Building and Zoning Department, a couple of weeks ago regarding the an amendment to that property, which actually is in line with what's happening just north of, we're literally right at the corner of the cutoff. Our main issue here is that we're seeing that where the boundary line is, they're getting the C1 commercial zoning, which allows for gas bar, motel, pretty much what we were requesting for our zoning area that we're told is probably going to be denied. Is there any way that we can be included into this?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Perrin, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the process or the area was defined by council through the study process. So at this point, I think it would be not advisable to include this area, start adding areas, because it has gone through a certain process under the Planning Act to include the lands that are being considered this evening. There's been public notice provided with respect to the proposed zoning. There's been consultation with the affected property owners. So at this point, staff would recommend that we stay the course and keep the study area the way it is currently defined, that council's considering tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Any questions, other questions online?
Seeing none currently.
Thank you. The podium's free if we have anyone wishing to speak from the gallery. Welcome. If you just state your name, please, and if you just press the button to turn on your microphone. Thank you very much.
Ann McVitie. I'm one of the residents in the hamlet immediately across from the zoning. And I guess just looking at the presentation tonight, one of the questions, I have a few, I'm not how many I'm allowed to ask, but I see that after consultation with the building or the landowners on number 3 highway, that there was a change to the distance for the light industrial to compensate. And I guess my question would be also, because we weren't included, since we are directly across from it in the hamlet, is there consideration for that distance to also be expanded or enlarged for us who are living directly across from it? So my understanding is you're looking for information from people to assist with the proposal and the plans.
Thank you, Ms. McVitie. Mr. Perrin, a question or comment for this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As any public meeting, staff are here to listen and take direction from council. If council wishes the boundary to look different than what is being proposed currently, then we can absolutely do that at the time of consideration of the bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, staff of Central Elgin. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Annette Wiesius and I live at 44329 Talbot Line in the municipality of Central Elgin. Our property is directly south of the proposed zoning change, is in the Schedule K rezoning. We were very surprised to hear about the gigafactory being built so close to us. We have many concerns about the close proximity of a factory of this magnitude located right near residential areas. We are concerned about air, noise, and light pollution, along with many questions in regard to our road, rail, and airways. Logically, we know they will all become busier. VW is coming. The point of tonight's meeting is the rezoning of the acres across the road from us. Will our residents be surrounded by industry? What will happen to highway number 3? It's already very busy. How will our roadway accommodate the increase in traffic that more industry will bring? What will happen to the 10 residences inside this acreage? The province of Ontario has funded the purchases in buying out the landowners of the original 1,500 acres. I would suggest that the province would buy out the remaining residents and keep the whole area industrial. We know that we cannot stand in the way of progress, and we don't want to. We feel there have been many private meetings in regards to these land purchases. There are some individuals who have benefited tremendously financially from these transactions. Some individuals have been on the inside track of these transactions. Will this council do the right thing for the residents of Central Elgin, specifically Yarmouth Centre? Will they remove all the residents from the proposed industrial land? These concerns have been addressed many times with the mayors of both Central Elgin and St. Thomas, as well as MPP Rob Flack and MP Karen Vecchio. Are the councillors present here tonight aware of these concerns? Meetings have been held between the residents and Mayor Sloan and Rob Flack. Letters, emails, and phone calls have been made. Are the councillors prepared to do what is right for their municipality? Council has the power to regulate land use for the health, safety, and welfare of their people. Zoning laws are weighed carefully to determine the best use of land for the majority of people in the area in question. Could you please elaborate on how rezoning these residents is in the best interest of the majority of people in this rezoning area?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. I didn't know we would see each other after 28 years. I think I was buying tomatoes from you in 1995.
We're the flower people.
Oh, my goodness.
Tomatoes
Sorry.
across the road.
I apologize. I don't have my glasses on, but anyway, I know your family well and know where you are, and I've met your son. And let me say that we did have a meeting with MPP Flack, and you're all very courteous and productive in the meeting. What we can tell you is, folks, with respect to the Volkswagen deal, we don't know what we don't know. We're briefing the council later in the next meeting, but you know, you said Volkswagen's coming, and provincial legislation was changed, which affects all of us. It affects the planners, it affects our staff here, it affects the council. This is something which is unprecedented. We are working as well as we can to find information, to meet with St. Thomas, to meet with the province. You know, you have some very pointed questions, and at the end of the day, I think the information that we have, in fact, sometimes, as I've said, you have more information than we do. Okay. When I met at the residence with Miss Bernardo, and is Mark your son? Okay. Very persuasive, very understanding, on the file, and are in touch with us, or MPP Flack, I would say, with probably pretty fair accuracy every 48 hours. And I understand that. I understand if we had a magic wand and could do something about this, it was not this council's decision on what farms went. It was not this council's decision on anything to do with Volkswagen. And, you know, I think you appreciate that, if I may. So tonight we're trying to get some information and get your points forward, and I appreciate them. You have another question or comment?
I just want to say, and I appreciate that you are not aware of many of the items. However, you folks hold the power, and we're counting on you to make the right decisions.
Thank you. We have more presenters. Ms. McVitie, please.
It's more questions and things to ponder for council when making these decisions and finalizing decisions. So questions such as the natural waterway that goes through that property. Already there is an adequate tiling system that dumps across the road. So we have certainly significant concerns as to how that will be managed. Also, the fact that we're looking at industrial land, significant industrial land across from us and beyond, and the effect on the waterways with which our homes receive well water. So what considerations are being made there? Things like, here we are living across from this industrial park. Wish I'd have known this 6 years ago before making major renovations. But when looking at it, we're living across from it. Are things being, or will things be considered such as lighting? Like right now, we have a light, the spotlight that stares at us from the fire hall. For what reason, we're not sure. Probably because nobody bothered to consider that there were residents next to it. So are we going to have all these lights glaring at us from businesses and industry? Is there going to be respect for, night lights so that we don't have that? So considering things like that, we're wondering about, do you have plans in regards to, the fire station? Will there be changes to that? Because we live beside the fire station, so that would have impact. The roadway. So that is another concern of ours. Is there going to be land of ours that will then be taken to, expand on road to allow for the significant increase in traffic that we're anticipating, not just from this industrial park, but from the one that the city of St. Thomas has recently acquired. So those are also some concerns and questions we have. In light of that, we were happy to at least see the speed limit was brought down to try and accommodate. But when designing an industrial park, are you looking at ways of directing traffic so that it isn't coming and having as much impact on a secondary road like Yarmouth Center, and directing it to have entrances and exits going towards the highways versus Yarmouth Center? So that is something we're wondering if council is considering when developing their plans. We have heard about the types of businesses. So again, just looking at, can that offset from the road for that light industrial be expanded upon, such as what you have done to accommodate the owners on Highway 3. And I guess too, I probably will be told that you have no idea or plans, but I have to ask, curious, are there any plans for the future for the land between Yarmouth Center and Tower Road that are being considered? And that's just a curious question from a homeowner that's sitting in the middle of all this. So those were some things that we wanted to ensure that council was considering, because we recognize you're not living across from this. So you may not be thinking of the things that impact you daily like we are.
Thanks, Ms. McVitie. Mr. Perrin, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can speak, we'll speak in generality. At this point, I think we can address a number of the concerns that was raised. So what this process does, it pre-zones the property for the types of uses that's being considered. By no means is this the final step. It is the zoning that permits the type of use. What would come after this would be, we would suggest an industrial plan of subdivision for the lands in its entirety. So it's looked at comprehensively for the entire block and not piecemeal. And that, that industrial plan of subdivision would be informed by a number of supporting studies. So the first one, in no particular order, but they would be a master servicing plan that would look at provision of sanitary and water servicing for the lands. It would look and not only for the lands that are in the study area, but also look at potential impacts to adjacent lands that are on private services. We understand that that area, or the majority of the area, is on private septic systems. The storm drainage is provided through municipal drains that have status under the Drainage Act. So that master servicing plan would look at the storm water that would be generated from a developed site, and would also employ our typical standards with respect to stormwater management for both quality and quantity control. So the idea is that we have more hard surfaces, increased runoff, so there has to be retention of that stormwater on site, so not to adversely affect the downstream water course. So with respect to stormwater, that would be addressed at that industrial plan of subdivision stage. With respect to access to the road network, that would need to be informed by a traffic impact study. And as we're all aware, the south boundary road is Highway 3, so MTO will have a significant amount of input to that traffic study. We have pre-consulted with MTO staff from Southwest Regional Office, and they've identified that the municipality should not be anticipating separate entrances out onto Highway 3. It would be done via potentially one intersection into the lands to the north, and then an internal street network to service these lands. So that's where the industrial plan of subdivision comes in. It would lay out a road network and potential blocks of land that could either be expanded or made smaller depending on the type of use, or the proponent coming forward wanting to construct an industrial site, we'll say. So, I'm going to use hypothetical numbers. So it could be a 50-acre parcel, and it could be a 50-acre parcel, or if someone wants two 25-acre parcels, it can be subdivided into two 25-acre parcels off an internal street. The concern with respect to things like location of parking lots, intrusion of light either from vehicles or from buildings, we'll say security lighting around buildings or street lighting, that would be addressed at two stages. The first for the on-road type of lighting for street lighting, that would be addressed at the industrial plan of subdivision stage for each individual development. So if Acme Widgets comes forward and says we want to develop on this site, then that in the municipality of Central Elgin, we have a site plan control bylaw that governs all industrial, commercial, and institutional types of development. And at that point in time, that site plan would be reviewed with respect to on-site lighting. And our standard now is that we try to take and have lighting that shines to the road surface for street lighting, not horizontally. And the lighting on each individual site would have down lighting as well. So even if it's wall packs on the side of a building, they would be cut off so that the light shines down and not out horizontally, with the goal not to have increased light spread off of or beyond the boundary of the property line. Not saying you won't see light, but you're not going to have what was referred to as the blinding light coming in, into my property. So I think that might have addressed the list, but if I miss some, I'm happy to go back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perrin. Any other questions or comments from the gallery, please come forward. State your name, please.
Kelly Ripley. I'm from 43920 Talbot line.
Thank you.
So from what I'm understanding, what you're saying then is that there will be one road in and then the other roads will come off of that road. What will happen then for, say, farmers lanes that are coming off of Highway 3? Would they be able to use them as an entrance to, if they bought that piece of property that's right there?
Mr. Perrin, please.
With respect to the industrial land development, so we don't want to preempt the process and what we're going to hear back from MTO, but I think I'm relatively comfortable suggesting that MTO is going to want one entrance with a street pattern inside. It's important to note, and Mr. Aston can correct me if I'm wrong, but the existing landowner rights for the use of their property now is maintained. So for example, the agricultural farm entrances, they would be in place for agricultural use, providing that the land doesn't change that use. But once it gets redeveloped, then the requirements of the traffic impact study and the industrial plan of subdivision would then kick in.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or presentations from the audience? If you could state your name, please.
I am Danielle Bernardo, for all of you who have not met me. I live at 44298 Talbot Line. I am one of the residential landowners that is in the proposed zoning. And I am here with the other residential landowners on the land. And we are here to seek clarification, on why our residential homes should remain on the proposed rezoning of major industrial land. And I'm going to make a really long speech. I did send in a letter, and I really encourage all of you guys to read that if you can, please. But in the provincial policy statement, it states that any land intended for industrial uses or manufacturing uses prohibits residential use. If future residential homes cannot exist on this land, then we ask, why is it okay for current residents to remain? We argue that it is not. Not only are there safety concerns, environmental risks, it's also a significant change to our quality of life. We are aware of the demand for industrial land in Ontario. We are aware that this demand exists even more now than ever since Volkswagen's announcement. So we understand that there's a need for Central Elgin to develop this land into industrial land. We know that these higher tax-paying industries could gain revenue to aid in water rates, revenue for future infrastructure, and potentially a financial reserve. We understand the potential for job creation that this could bring locally as well. What we cannot understand is mixing residential and industrial uses. Right now, Central Elgin has an opportunity. That opportunity is to negotiate with St. Thomas and Ontario for the annex land and seek compensation to relocate these families. This would allow Central Elgin to increase its land use potential on the Talbot employment lands. We purchased our homes in a rural setting. We did not choose to live in an industrial park. So I'd like to leave these last thoughts with you. Would you want to raise your family in an industrial park? Would you want to live in a 2,000-acre industrial park? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Anyone else would like to come forward? Oh, we got a couple. You just state your name, sir, when you take the podium, please.
My name is Richard Cox. I live at 9510 Yarmouth Center Road.
Thank you.
I've been at both of the landowner meetings that have occurred with respect to this, what we're talking about tonight. I wasn't going to say anything, but especially after the last presenter, I got thinking, we talk about the official plan and everything seems to be hinging around this official plan. Why can't the official plan be changed? Has anybody thought about that? We've got a very complicated situation where we have industrial land being proposed to come into areas where there's commercial, there's residential, there might be some light industrial. Is there a better place for that? I think of go north of Ron McNeil line and go between Highbury and Yarmouth Center Road. I know it's farmland, but so is the majority of the land we're talking about here. What about a parcel of land in that area, right adjacent, right north of the heavy industrial where Volkswagen's going and the other related industries? It would be displacing some farms and obviously some residences, but much less than what we're talking about here. I'm sure there's even more people than what's in this room that are going to be affected. It's complicated, and a lot of questions have gone unanswered. We've asked about where's the access onto this land for sure. Where is it going to be? Nobody gives us a straight answer. We think we might have a driveway off of highway number 3 or an access point, but that's not a given. So the west boundary and the south boundary, we're landlocked. You go north, you got the railway tracks. What's left? Yarmouth Center Road. Really? Yarmouth Center Road is an access? Maybe, maybe not. I just want to throw that out there. What's the process? Is it possible to look at the master plan, the official plan, whatever you want to call it, and relocate these employment lands someplace else that's better suited with less people displaced or affected by it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. I will make one. I think I would like to make one comment. The Volkswagen purchase affects everyone in this room, the staff, the council. This was something that we had not predicted, right? So you've got the largest manufacturing facility in the country going to be built and operating in 2027. If I had the answers on where the hydro will come, where the rail will come, where the access points will come, I'd provide them to you, but that is information which up to now, we don't really have. So there's two pieces to this. One has to do with Volkswagen and how this council works with a facilitator in the city of St. Thomas going forward. Happy to raise your concerns, happy to talk about all the options that are available. Now, we don't have a crystal ball of what's going on. At some point, we'll get more information about the Volkswagen purchase, but we did not know, and I reiterate, the night before this Bill 63 or whatever the number was went through, there was no one on this council. I briefed this council that it would be half the acreage that it would be in good faith. So we're learning information as it comes available. And that facilitation process is ongoing. And again, I'm briefing the council on it for what we do know at this point in our meeting, which starts after this one. So that's part of it. But don't think that we're not affected or the staff aren't affected, that the official plan isn't affected by the addition of a facility which is 4 or 5 times the size of the Ford plant, which will employ 3,000 people, which will require all kinds of resources, infrastructure, which we do not have at this time an understanding of what it entails. So this is not something that we are keeping from you. This is not something that we know, and it's being held in secret. So there's two pieces. There's Volkswagen, and then there's us doing our industrial lands. Our industrial lands, which the classifications are class 1 and class 2. So to Mr. Cox's question, I realize you're affected. I realize that the farm lanes in certain areas are going to be affected. I don't know where the trucks are going to come into for the Volkswagen plant, whether they come in Highbury or some say number 3 highway. But these are all questions that if we had the answers to, we'd be happy to provide as much information as we could. So that's on the Volkswagen piece, and I just want to be clear about that. And I think that's essentially what council's our opinion is. As soon as we get information and are able to provide information, we'll do so at the time that it's available. As for the specifics about our lands, I don't want to speak on the official plan and where the land might go or not go. I think it's been a process to find the official lands where they are. I know there was a job site challenge at the last council where these lands were looked at, and I think that's going back a few years, but I'll defer to staff if they have any further comments on that piece. Mr. Perrin, please.
Through Mr. Mayor. So with respect to the designation of these lands for employment purposes, they come forward actually from former Yarmouth Township's official plan. The municipality of Central Elgin completed its first official plan in 2013, and it was approved in 2013. There was considerable public process with respect to the development of that official plan. It was approved at that time by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And the latest official plan was completed with considerable public process and input, and advertising that public consultation that was completed in 2020, 2020-2021 over a period of about 18 months. And then it was adopted by council in the previous council, I believe in November of 2021 or 2022 rather. And it just received final approval from the County of Elgin, who's now the approval authority for official plan in Elgin County in I believe March of 2023. So to go back and say, okay, we're not going to use these lands for industrial and commercial purposes now, we would, recognizing the concerns that we're hearing, it would virtually change those designation that's been in place for well over 35 years. And that could only be done, and I'm going to defer to my planning friends in the room, but that would have to be done through a comprehensive official plan amendment in order to bring a large area of employment lands on stream that are not currently designated.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Presenters, please.
Got it. So as what you were just saying, oh, sorry,
Yep.
Mark Weishes.
Thank you, Mark.
44270 Talbot line.
Good to see you.
Lands. As to what you were just saying, Mr. Sloan, about the biggest industrial building, auto sector building coming to St. Thomas. As to the D6 guidelines that they're proposing on our lands, they're using the smallest amount or smallest distances for our properties. So if you read the D6 guidelines, I don't know why they're pushing so close to our properties. Why can't we, if we're going to be living to the biggest industrial park in Ontario, why are we using the smallest amount of distance from our houses?
So just at the meeting, we talked about this, you're 1.2 kilometers from the plant. Is that about correct?
Yes, that we're far enough from the plant. Well,
Yes.
I don't agree with that, but that's a whole nother discussion. If this is if we're rezoning us industrial.
Yes.
On
Class
these,
1 and 2.
we're doing class 1 and 2. So the D6 guidelines online are 70 meters and 300 meters are affected areas. So why are we going with the 20 and 70 meter distance?
I can ask the question of staff, either Mr. Perrin or Mr. Aston.
Yeah, Mr. Askin can answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. The D6 guidelines, as I said, they are land use compatibility guidelines from the province that relate to the separation distances based on classes. So we are looking at, and I'll acknowledge we're looking at what the guidelines speak to as minimum recommended setbacks between land uses. And so what we're looking at is the 20-meter minimum recommended setback is for a class 1 facility. So some of the facilities that would be similar to some that are out there today. A class 2 facility, the minimum setback is 70 meters recommended. So we've taken that minimum recommended setback from the D6 guidelines for that facility and applied it. By increasing where we did from what we presented at the landowner meeting, the light industrial, I think in some cases we're over in around or over 100 meters setback from the existing residential uses, the smaller residential uses that are within that area. So I would suggest that while we've put the minimum recommended setback up on the slide to gauge where we're at, if we were to overlay that with where we're proposing the difference between light and general industrial, we've moved the general industrial much further back than the minimum recommended setback. And that would be the class 2 facility that would have the potential instances for more noise and truck use. But again, we've also tried to identify through the minimum landscape buffer strip, establishing that as a true buffer landscape strip versus something where use could put in parking or a laneway. So we're trying to do two things with setting the buildings back and then ensuring that the buffer strip is a actual active buffer strip.
Thank you, Mr. Aston. Supplementary, Mr. Weistis?
Basically, so would council want to live with industrial living? Or would you want to live in a residential building with 20-meter distance to industrial park? I really hope you think about it.
Thank you, David. Any other folks wish to come up and say something? Sir, welcome. If you'd state your name, please, and turn on the microphone. Thank you.
I'm Dylan Milligan, 43674 Talbot line.
Thank you.
I'm just wanted to bring up that like I understand that there's a plan and obviously like your zoning for light industrial and et cetera. But obviously as from what we've seen from industrial parks and like obviously you guys have stated that Volkswagen is also not something that have a lot of knowledge about, and obviously a lot of things happen there. But like what we have talked about before, we know that sister companies come in, that a lot more people are wanting to surround themselves around such a factory like that, which is a good advantage for you guys by all means, and for Central Elgin. And we hope obviously that you guys do your fullest to be able to take advantage of that. But to me, it's hard for me to understand where it's like, I'm looking at guidelines of how far you're setting back. Then you look at soft industrial and light industrial and this and that, where it's like, I don't want to be like, I want it to be known as like, I don't want it to be soft. Like, I don't want to be light industrial. I don't want to be anything where it's like, I understand that is what you guys are working for, but is a industrial plant come to you guys that say is a sister company of them, will the planning effect change that where they're going, like you guys have it zoned for light industrial where it's like, you guys can have an actual industrial park come in and be like, no, like we want to be adjacent to Volkswagen. We want to supply them and we're looking at these lands, but you are planning for stores and this and that. And it's like, to me as a person, like I rather, like I said before, if you're going to bring in an industrial park, bring an industrial park and obviously make sure that you take care of your local community. And like, it doesn't make it any better to me if you're like, oh, well, we have, Sears, we got this store, we got that store. Like that doesn't make me feel any better. I'd rather like, that's just more traffic. That's more people. Like I have a small family. I brought the property for that reason, but it's at the same time, I just want to know that like, if there's an opportunity, I think it should be seized as an opportunity to make it to what it's better, that suits you guys and the community. But you have to like, also remember that like, we don't really want any of this, but if there is, it would be nice to know that like anything can come in there and you're going to take care of us as well.
Loud and clear. Thank you very much. How are we doing? Other questions or comments? Sir.
I'm Fred McVitie. I live at 9586 Yarmouth Center Road. One of the things that's became very clear to me is that the introduction of this electrical vehicle plant, nobody has told anybody anything. Nobody's telling them where the roadways are going to be, what the time frame is. Everything seems to be hidden from Central Elgin. And I'd just like to know, what are you doing to negotiate with Joe Preston moving forward on what is happening on this road?
So, Mr. McVitie, the province put forward a facilitator named Paula Dill. She works for the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. She has put forward some dates for meetings, and at those meetings, it's going to be an ongoing process. Central Elgin will meet with the facilitator, and we'll meet with the facilitator in St. Thomas. So, as we know, we weren't planning on this and to have the land annexed. So we have a couple of things that we have to do. We have to look at how it affects the Central Elgin ratepayer. We have to look at what the challenges and opportunities are going to be on any kind of shared service going forward. And at that point, I will report back to council how the negotiations go. But this isn't going to happen overnight. As I say, the province put forward a facilitator, and when they put forward Bill 63 or whatever the number is, to facilitate a fair and equitable agreement between St. Thomas and Central Elgin. As someone said here earlier today, there's a lot of interest from the province in ensuring a fair deal, because let's not forget, our members of parliament or provincial parliament don't represent one or the other. They represent both. So I think an equitable deal, a deal which gives Central Elgin residents, if you will, some reassurances of what it is that we no longer have, and also could perhaps address some of the challenges that we face regardless of the Volkswagen plant. So it won't happen overnight. We're starting a process of negotiations. The province is facilitating it, and as we have more information, we'll make it available. But quite frankly, we're dealing in an information deficit. I've gotten information from people in your group that I've sent forward and said, why don't I have this? How did they get it? Well, quite frankly, the information isn't flowing as of right now. There's still a tremendous amount of secrecy around this deal. And sir, that's kind of the short answer.
I still don't understand. If you're putting a plant there, there has to be plans for putting the plant there. Like, they didn't just buy this land and say, I'm going to build a mega factory here. We have no plans. So somebody knows a lot more than is being told to the residents of Central Elgin. And I don't understand who we go to, because the member of parliament, the member of provincial parliament, nobody seems to want to say anything except that we're a bunch of complainers because we live on these roads and we're affected by it. So
I don't think you're a complainer, sir. I think the frustration is not only felt by you, but it's felt by people sitting around this table.
Sure.
And I all I can say is that as soon as we know, I think negotiations with the company are ongoing. I don't have the background in a deal like this and what the timelines are, but I think that we'll get more information in the shorter term. Or sorry, we'll get more information. And as we do, it will be easier for us to make decisions. All I can do is give you the assurances that, you know, we're open to understanding there's going to be tremendous challenges for people that live nearby like yourselves, as well as the staff here, for what the infrastructure required will be. We talk about the houses that are going to have to be built, whether for people that are going to come and work at the factory. So there's going to be a lot of people that are affected by this. So all I can say is that we'll continue to keep as much information as we find flowing to you, the homeowners. I also mentioned in the meeting that the city of St. Thomas does have some people that will be actually on the facility. And at some point, I think community relations will be something that they'll definitely be undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. I don't know if a couple of those are, I got a clap, but anyway, is there anyone else that would like to speak, please? Coming? Okay. No hurry.
Don't be scared.
I'm not. I remember you from our other meeting. Was that your husband that was up before? Okay, very well. Welcome. If you could just state your name,
Yeah,
please.
Dakota Milligan, 43674 Talbot line. I mean, you've got all the questions till you're blue in the face, and you know, you're giving us what you all know. My question is, where do we go from here? On your beautiful calendar, this is the last thing that you have scheduled. So now what?
Well, respectfully, I think we already had one meeting. Mr. Perrin and his staff were out and met with everyone.
Yep.
I met with you and with Mr. Flack. I'm sure there's an ongoing process. Could I ask Mr. Perrin what the next steps are, or our planner, please? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the next step in the process is consider the statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. You know, Mr. Aston, he's in the room. He's hearing the conversation, the discussion. Myself, honestly, there's probably limited, based on what we've heard tonight, there's limited things that staff would suggest could be considered for amendments to the bylaw. Those are two things in my mind. What I've heard is potentially increasing the along the west side of Yarmouth Center Road, pushing the boundary between the Class 1 and Class 2 further west to try to push that Class 2 boundary away from the residential properties on the east side of Yarmouth Center Road, and potentially even further push the boundary between Class 1 and Class 2 on the north side of Highway 3. Staff and Mr. Aston believe, we did hear the conversation, when we met with the landowners back 3 weeks ago. And as a result, we've pushed that boundary back even further. So it lines up on the ground. To give it some perspective, it lines up with the rear of the property of Huron Tractor. It was closer to that, to the residential properties in the past. We heard the concerns with respect to compatibility between residential properties and the commercial 1 and the commercial 2. So the commercial 2 is more potentially obtrusive. It has the potential for shift work. It has the potential for more outside storage of goods. So pushing it away from the residential, we thought was a realistic, request. Those are the two things that I'm hearing tonight. If council directs us differently, we can make further amendments. But then the next step would be for council to consider that bylaw at a future meeting of council. And at this point, we're anticipating that could be at the June 12th meeting which would be the next meeting of council.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin.
Okay, so just to because you put in perspective, we have been dealing with this, which is our lives since the beginning of the year. That's 5 months of unknown of what should I do to my house? Where should I enroll my child in school? All these questions that you deal with on the daily basis of planning for your future, all of a sudden put on hold because you have no clue. No matter who you ask, no matter what you ask, you're not getting the answers that are going to help you. So please consider that when making your decision. June 12th. So you'll revise it. Sorry, Lord. You'll revise it, make your changes, then present it on June 12th. And then moving forward, timeline wise, you then what?
So, sorry, Mr. Chair. So if council is in agreement with what I stated earlier about those 2 revisions, we would revise the bylaw, bring it back for council at the June 12th meeting, subject to council approving that zoning bylaw. Then the appeal period would then kick in, at which point any member of the public could appeal that zoning bylaw to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If it gets through the appeal period, then the zoning bylaw would be final and binding, and it would be in place on the ground.
Thanks very much, Mr. Perrin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your voice has been heard. Thank you, folks. Oh, Ms. McVitie, you're coming back?
Yes, I'm coming back. I keep hearing how we've had the meetings, and unfortunately, we in the hamlet living directly across from the property have not been allowed to be part of any of the meetings. So I just want to really reinforce that this is our first opportunity to voice and to be heard. And I'm just really strongly hoping that council is listening to our concerns and really looking at, and I don't have the language of your, setbacks, but having an increase in the setback and an increase in the setback of the light industrial and regular industrial, because this has been our first opportunity to be heard. So I just wanted to reinforce that because I keep hearing, yes, we've had many opportunities, we have had many meetings, but we've had none. So this is it.
Fair comment. Thank you, Ms. McVitie. Mr. Perrin, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, so the reason that there was public meetings and we're considering them, they're not public under the definition of the Planning Act. They were meetings with the landowners as property holders because this was a municipally led zoning amendment on lands that was initiated by the municipality. Typically, what we normally see, we'll say, a 50-acre parcel that's going for residential development requires a zoning amendment. So there would be a number of meetings between the proponent because the landowner would be initiating the rezoning and the municipality, and there'd be back and forth between municipal staff and the landowner. And then at that point in time, there would be a report comes to council outlining what the application is and what the proposed use is. And then there would be direction to hold a public meeting. That's what this public meeting is about. That would be comparable to that, public meeting on the residential development side. So, I can appreciate the comments, but the meetings that have happened before tonight were with the landowners whose property the zoning bylaw is being proposed on. The public, gets an opportunity to speak tonight, and then those comments get considered.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. And thank you to those who are in the gallery that came out this evening. Appreciate your time, appreciate your input. We've learned a lot, and we'll consider what we've heard this evening. And we have our, you've got access to council and to talk and discussions, and I'm sure Danielle and Mark will hear from you in the coming days. As I said, your group is very well organized, very productive, very courteous. Danielle even gives me a chance not to have to reply on Sunday. I get to wait till the next day. But seriously, I know it's affecting your homes. I know it's affecting, as I say, the folks in this room, our staff, who are having to respond to the Volkswagen plant and to this unprecedented generational construction project, which is going to take some time. Now, 2027 opening date. So a lot of the stuff a lot of the items will come to be in the next short, medium, and long term. And all I can say is we're doing our best, or we'll do our best to keep you in the information that we have. Sometimes we just don't have it. And I know that's frustrating to hear. We understand your concerns. And again, I just want to thank you for coming out today on behalf of all of council. And please, you have the opportunity. It's not just Mr. Perrin, it's the council here. And I think Councillor Watson is the ward councillor, is he not? Is he here? Okay, well, Councillor Watson, there's another person you can chat with about this, as well as all of us, because we understand your frustrations. So, did I miss something? Okay, perfect. So in closing, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please advise that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Delaney Leach, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on, or they should call Delaney Leach at 519-631-4860. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. This public meeting is adjourned at 6:59. Thank you.